The metal serving tongs hit the concrete with a sharp clang. No one laughed after that. General Marcus Hale stood at the edge of my aunt's backyard, still wearing his dress uniform from the Memorial Day ceremony downtown. His eyes moved from my cousin Brandon's smirk to the small wooden case he had taken from my bag. Then the general looked at me. North Star? I had not heard that name spoken aloud in 7 years. Around us, paper plates stopped moving. The grill hissed behind Brandon, filling the sudden quiet with the smell of smoke and burned barbecue sauce. Brandon gave a nervous laugh. You know Evelyn? She just pushes papers at the Pentagon. General Hale did not answer him. He set down his glass, straightened his shoulders, and raised his hand in a formal salute. A 4-star general, saluting me. Brandon's smile disappeared as Hale's gaze dropped to the case in his hands. Ma'am, he said quietly, he had no right to touch that. And that was when my cousin finally understood he had opened something that had been closed for a reason. 3 hours earlier, I had almost turned the car around. My aunt lived in a wide brick house outside Arlington, Virginia, on a street where every lawn looked professionally measured. Small American flags lined the sidewalk for Memorial Day, snapping in the warm afternoon wind. I sat behind the wheel for a moment with the engine off. From the backyard came the sound of country music, children shouting near the sprinkler, and Brandon's voice rising above everyone else's. He had always spoken as though silence was an empty space he had been personally assigned to fill. I reached for the leather bag on the passenger seat. Inside it was a small walnut case, darkened at the corners from years of handling. I had brought it because I planned to stop somewhere after the barbecue. I had not told my family where. I slid the case beneath a folded cardigan and closed the bag. Then I went inside. The backyard smelled of charcoal, sweet barbecue sauce, and freshly cut grass. My uncle stood near the grill in an apron that said, King of the Flame. My aunt was arranging deviled eggs beside a bowl of melting ice. Champagne glasses rested on a white folding table, though most people were drinking beer from silver tubs. Brandon saw me before I reached the patio. There she is, he called, the Pentagon's most dangerous paper pusher. A few people laughed. I smiled once and kissed my aunt on the cheek. Brandon wore a navy polo with his construction company logo stitched over the chest. He had recently won a county contract and had spent most of spring making sure everyone knew the number. Still in that windowless office? He asked. Mostly. What do you even do all day? I review operational records. He turned to the men near the cooler. That means spreadsheets. More laughter. I took a glass of water and stood near the shade of the maple tree. My mother had once told me that Brandon teased people because he wanted them to feel included. That was how our family explained cruelty when it came dressed as humor. He was only joking. He did not mean anything by it. Do not make the day uncomfortable. So I had learned to let sentences pass through me without leaving a mark anyone else could see. Near the patio door, Aunt Carol lowered her voice. General Hale may stop by later. He spoke at the ceremony with your uncle. My hand tightened around the glass. I looked toward her. Marcus Hale? She nodded. Do you know him? Not well anymore. That answer satisfied her. It did not satisfy me. The last time I had seen Marcus Hale, there had been no music, no lawn chairs, and no smell of barbecue smoke. There had been only rotor wash, red emergency lights, and a voice over my headset telling me there was no time to go back. I placed my water on the table before anyone noticed it trembling. Then Brandon reached for my leather bag. What are you hiding in here, Evelyn? I caught the strap before Brandon could lift the bag from the chair. Leave it. He looked at my hand, then at me. For half a second, something harder than humor passed across his face. Then he grinned. Relax. I'm not stealing state secrets. A few people nearby laughed because they had heard the last sentence but not the first. I took the bag from him and placed it beneath my chair. Brandon raised both hands. There it is again, the mysterious government act. There is no act. Then tell us what you do. I already did. No, you gave us the brochure answer. He picked up a beer and leaned against the patio railing. His audience had started to gather without meaning to. My uncle watched the grill. My mother adjusted napkins that did not need adjusting. Aunt Carol opened another bottle of champagne. No one asked Brandon to stop. That was the part families rarely admitted. A person like him did not control a room alone. He controlled it because everyone else decided that resisting him would cost more than letting one person absorb the damage. I had been that person for years. Come on, he said. We all have real jobs here. Dad runs logistics. I manage 43 employees. Rachel teaches 28 kids. You sit in a basement and read old reports. Some of them are not old. See? He pointed at me as if I had helped his argument. Exciting stuff. I could have corrected him. I could have told him the reports I reviewed involved aviation accidents, failed rescue procedures, emergency extraction routes, and decisions that followed pilots home. I could have told him I had been brought into the Pentagon because I knew what a bad decision sounded like before it became a casualty report. I did not. Not because the information was classified. Most of it was not anymore. I stayed quiet because explaining my value to people committed to misunderstanding me had become a kind of unpaid labor. I was tired of doing it. My mother came to stand beside me. "You look thin," she said. "I'm fine. Are you sleeping?" "Enough." She glanced toward Brandon. "He's proud of his contract. Let him have his moment." I looked at her. "He can have his moment without using me as the floor." Her mouth tightened. "You know how he is." Yes. That was the problem. Everyone knew how Brandon was. No one ever asked what knowing him required from the rest of us. My mother touched my arm. "Not today, Evelyn." She moved away before I could ask which day would finally belong to me. The music changed. Someone carried out a tray of corn. A little boy ran across the lawn with a plastic airplane held above his head, making engine noises with his mouth. The sound was harmless. My body did not know that. For one breath, the backyard disappeared. The air became thinner. The sunlight turned red behind my eyelids. I heard the clipped rhythm of a warning alarm and the hard vibration of rotor blades struggling against mountain wind. Then someone dropped a metal lid near the grill. I flinched so sharply that water spilled over my hand. Brandon saw it. He always saw weakness when it could be used publicly. "What happened?" he asked. "Enemy spreadsheet?" The laugh that followed was smaller this time. My uncle looked down at the grill. My mother whispered his name. Brandon shrugged. "I'm joking." There it was. The sentence people used when they wanted forgiveness without responsibility. I wiped my hand with a napkin. "Then try being funny." His smile stayed in place, but his eyes changed. He was not used to resistance from me, especially not resistance delivered quietly. 7 years earlier, I had not been quiet. Back then, I had been Major Evelyn Cross, pilot in command of a combat search and rescue helicopter attached to a joint recovery task force. My aircraft was built to fly into places other crews were ordered to avoid. We did not carry passengers. We carried people who had run out of every other option. The mission that ended my flying career began with 6 words over a broken radio channel. "Recon team pinned. Multiple injuries. Extraction impossible." The weather over the valley had closed faster than forecast. Dust moved through the air in thick brown curtains. 2 aircraft had already turned back. Our operations officer told us to hold. Then the voice came again. This time I heard someone in the background calling coordinates and trying not to sound afraid. There were 11 people on the ground. One of them was Marcus Hale. He was not a 4-star general then. He was a brigadier general overseeing a joint operation, and he had gone forward because the team had lost communication with command. People later made the mission sound cleaner than it was. They used phrases like extraordinary courage and disregard for personal safety. They did not mention the smell of overheated wiring. They did not mention my co-pilot, Daniel Reyes, tapping the side of his helmet because our left channel kept cutting out. They did not mention how many times I almost turned away. Daniel had been with me through 3 deployments. He kept cinnamon gum in his flight vest and called every bad idea a scheduling problem. When we received the extraction call, he looked at the weather wall ahead of us and said, "North Star, this is going to be ugly." North Star. The call sign had started as a joke during training because I was terrible at navigating city streets but could find a landing zone in darkness with half my instruments failing. That day, it stopped being funny. We reached the team with fuel already below the margin I should have accepted. There was no landing zone. Only a narrow shelf of rock, loose soil, and men using smoke to show us where the wind was trying to throw us. I held the aircraft in a hover while the pararescue team moved the injured aboard. 1 man. Then 3. Then 7. The mountain disappeared behind dust. Our engine temperature climbed. Daniel kept reading the numbers. 10 people made it inside. The 11th was General Hale. He refused to board until the last wounded sergeant was secured. By then, warning lights had begun to flicker across the panel. We lifted under fire with more weight than the aircraft should have carried. For 14 minutes, I believed we had done the impossible. Then the left side took damage. I remembered the sound. Not an explosion. Something smaller. A sharp metallic strike beneath Daniel's seat. He looked down once. Then, at me. His voice stayed calm. Keep flying. I did. That was the part no metal citation ever understood. I kept flying. I did not reach for him. I did not turn. I did not stop the aircraft carrying 11 people to try to save the one person sitting beside me. Daniel died before we reached the field hospital. For years, people told me I had made the correct decision. Correct decisions did not wake me at 2:17 inches the morning. Correct decisions did not leave cinnamon gum unopened in the top drawer of my desk. Correct decisions did not sound like a friend saying, keep flying. I never returned to active flight duty. I completed rehabilitation, accepted a stateside assignment, and eventually moved into operational review. To my family, the transfer confirmed what they had always believed. Evelyn had finally taken a safe office job. Only my father understood there was nothing safe about reading reports written by pilots who had made choices like mine. He never asked me to explain the mission. He only sat beside me during the nights I could not sleep. After he died, I stopped trying to make the family understand. At the barbecue, Brandon was still watching me. He had found a new direction. So, he said, how much do taxpayers pay someone to read reports? Enough. That means more than it should. Probably less than your county contract. A few heads turned. He gave a short laugh. My contract builds something people can see. Visibility is not the same as value. His jaw tightened. My aunt stepped between us with a plate of ribs. Food is ready. For several minutes, the gathering broke apart into motion. People filled plates. Chairs scraped against the patio. The children were called in from the lawn. I sat at the far end of the table beside Rachel, Brandon's younger sister. She taught middle school science and had perfected the expression of someone who could hear conflict without appearing to participate. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For what? For not saying anything. I looked at her plate. You still could. She glanced toward Brandon. He'll turn it into a whole thing. It already is a whole thing. She did not answer. That was another lesson I had learned in the military. Silence could be discipline. It could be protection. It could also be permission. Across the table, Brandon was describing the truck he planned to buy after the county released the next payment. He talked about upgraded leather, towing capacity, and a sound system that cost more than my first car. Then he looked toward me. What do you drive now? Still that old gray thing? It runs. You have to enjoy your life sometime. I do. Doing what? Filing? My mother sighed. Brandon. What? I'm trying to help her. He turned back to me. You know what your problem is, Evie? I hated that name in his mouth. You think being quiet makes you deep. The table stopped in uneven stages. A fork paused. Someone reached for a glass and changed their mind. Brandon continued. But sometimes quiet is just quiet. Sometimes there's nothing underneath. I studied him. He expected anger. Anger would have made him comfortable. It would have allowed him to call me sensitive and himself honest. Instead, I asked, do you need there to be nothing underneath? His face shifted. What does that mean? It means you seem invested. Rachel looked down. My uncle coughed into his napkin. Brandon leaned back in his chair. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You act like you're above everyone. I came here to eat with my family. No, you came here to sit in a corner and judge us. I was standing under a tree. You know what I mean. I usually don't. His hand closed around his beer bottle. Then he smiled again. Not because he had calmed down, because he had decided to escalate. Let's settle it. There is nothing to settle. He stood and raised his voice toward the table. Who here actually knows what Evelyn does? No one answered. My mother's eyes moved toward me and away. Brandon spread his arms. Exactly. She's been at the Pentagon for years, and no one can explain her job. Maybe because there isn't much to explain. I review military aviation operations. That sounds invented. It isn't. Then give us one example. Now. His smile widened. Because it's classified? Because you are not asking in good faith. Oh, come on. We're family. I looked at him. Family is not a security clearance. That earned one quiet laugh from the other end of the table. Brandon heard it. His cheeks darkened. He walked around the table and stopped beside my chair. I bet the mysterious box explains everything. My bag was beneath the seat. I placed one foot over the strap. No. What's in it? Something that does not belong to you. He bent down. I moved to stand, but my aunt caught my wrist. Please, she whispered. Don't make a scene. The sentence was so familiar that for a moment I became 22 again, standing in my mother's kitchen while Brandon mocked my decision to enlist. Do not make a scene. As if the scene began when I resisted it. That hesitation was enough. Brandon pulled the bag free. Give it back, I said. He held it above the table. Relax. I'm just proving there's no secret identity. Rachel stood. Brandon, stop. He opened the clasp. My mother said his name again, louder now. He ignored her and pushed aside the cardigan. His fingers closed around the walnut case. Everything inside me went still. Not calm. Still. The kind of stillness that comes before an aircraft loses lift. Put it down, I said. He turned the case over in his hands. It was simple, almost plain. Dark wood, brass hinges, one small silver emblem set into the lid. Brandon squinted at it. What is this? I walked toward him. He stepped back. You brought jewelry to a barbecue? Hand it to me. Maybe this is where the government keeps your Employee of the Month pin. His thumb moved toward the latch. I stopped. Do not open that. For the first time, my voice changed. Not louder, sharper. The voice I had used over radio channels when panic could kill faster than fire. Brandon heard it. So did everyone else. His thumb paused. Then he looked around and saw that all eyes were on him. That made the decision for him. He opened the case. The hinges gave a soft click. Inside, against dark blue velvet, rested the medal I had not worn since the White House ceremony. The pale blue ribbon, the gold star, the eagle above it. Brandon stared at it without recognition. Then he laughed. This? He lifted the medal by its ribbon. My vision narrowed. Put it back. What is it? Some kind of retirement award? Rachel had gone pale. She knew enough to recognize the shape, even if she could not name it. Brandon, she whispered. That's not funny. He held it up toward the sunlight. You bought this online, didn't you? The words reached me slowly, not because they were difficult to understand, because some lines, once crossed, changed the geography of a relationship. I stepped closer. My father carried that case to the hospital when I came home. Brandon's smile weakened, but he did not stop. Then tell us what it is. I looked at the medal swinging from his fingers. I saw my father's hands closing the lid after I asked him to remove it from the room. I saw Daniel's mother refusing to blame me when I could not stop blaming myself. I saw General Hale standing at a podium, describing courage, while I counted every person who had returned and the one who had not. It is not your story, I said. Brandon mistook restraint for retreat. He raised the medal higher. Then maybe stop carrying props designed to make people curious. The patio door opened behind him. No one noticed at first. Aunt Carol's champagne glass slipped slightly in her hand. My uncle straightened near the grill. A tall man stepped onto the patio in a dark blue dress uniform. 4 silver stars aligned across each shoulder. General Marcus Hale had arrived without ceremony. He greeted my uncle, then turned toward the table. His eyes moved over the plates, the guests, and the walnut case lying open beside Brandon. Then he saw the medal hanging from my cousin's hand. The general stopped walking. His gaze lifted to my face. For 7 years, I had wondered what I would feel if I ever heard that name again. I expected shame, maybe anger. Instead, I felt only tired. General Hale took 1 step forward. North Star? The metal serving tongs slipped from my uncle's hand and struck the concrete. General Hale did not look away from me. North Star? He repeated. I gave the smallest nod. Yes, sir. Brandon glanced between us. You two know each other? The general's attention moved to the ribbon twisted around Brandon's fingers. His expression did not harden. That would have been easier. Instead, something in it became formal. Measured. Set that down, he said. Brandon looked at the medal. What, this? General Hale took another step forward. You are holding the Medal of Honor. The words did not seem to land all at once. Rachel covered her mouth. My uncle's apron moved in the wind from the grill. My mother stared at the open case as if it had appeared from somewhere outside our family. Brandon laughed once. It was short and hollow. No. Evelyn works in an office. General Hale looked at him. So do I. No one smiled. Brandon lowered the medal slightly. I mean, she reviews paperwork. She reviews combat aviation operations. That's what she says. It is what I assigned her to do. Brandon's eyes shifted toward me. General Hale continued before he could speak. Major Cross was one of the most capable rescue pilots I ever served with. My mother's lips parted. Major? I had not heard her say the rank before. She knew I had been an officer. She had attended my commissioning, but over the years the details had been reduced to something easier for the family to understand. Evelyn joined the military. Evelyn flew for a while. Evelyn came home and took a desk job. The truth had been flattened until no one had to look too closely at what it contained. General Hale turned toward me. May? I knew what he meant. I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to close the case, leave the backyard, and let Brandon keep believing whatever allowed him to sleep comfortably. Then I saw the medal still hanging from his hand. Not held with care. Not even held with curiosity anymore. Held like evidence in an argument he was losing. I nodded. General Hale faced me fully. His heels came together. His shoulders squared. Then a four-star general raised his hand and saluted me. The gesture lasted only a few seconds. It did not feel triumphant. It felt like a door opening onto a room I had spent years avoiding. I returned the salute. My hand was steady. When Hale lowered his arm, he looked at Brandon. Military custom recognizes the recipient, he said, not the rank. Brandon placed the medal on the table. The ribbon fell partly across a plate. I moved it away from the barbecue sauce and laid it back in the case. I didn't know, he said. I closed the lid. You did not ask. I asked you all the time. No. You performed your answer and waited for me to agree. His face tightened. That's not fair. General Hale's gaze moved to him. Fair? The word was quiet, but Brandon stopped speaking. Hale rested one hand against the back of an empty chair. 7 years ago, I was trapped in a valley with a reconnaissance team after our evacuation route collapsed. 2 aircraft turned back because the weather made entry nearly impossible. He did not look at me while he spoke. For that, I was grateful. Major Cross entered the valley under fire. She held a damaged aircraft in a hover over terrain that could not support a landing. Her crew extracted 11 of us. My aunt sat down slowly. Rachel looked at me as though I had become someone else. I had not. That was the strange part. I was still wearing the same gray blouse. There was still water drying on my hand. The grill still smelled like burned sugar. Only their view of me had changed. Hale continued. Her aircraft sustained damage during departure. She kept it in the air long enough to reach medical support. Brandon swallowed. So she saved you? Hale looked at him directly. She saved everyone who made it aboard. The sentence caught beneath my ribs. Everyone who made it aboard. Not everyone who left with me. Not Daniel. I opened the case again and adjusted the ribbon, though it did not need adjusting. My mother watched my hands. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. The question held hurt. That surprised me. Not because she had no right to feel it, because she sounded as if my silence had happened without her help. I tried, I said. When? After I came home. Her face changed. I remembered the night clearly. I had sat in her kitchen with my left arm still braced from surgery. I had begun to tell her about Daniel. She had touched my hand and said, You're home now, let's focus on that. She had meant kindness. But kindness that could not bear witness became another kind of abandonment. You said I should put it behind me, I told her. Her eyes lowered. I thought I was helping. I know. General Hale looked toward the case. The citation never described the whole mission. Brandon seemed eager for something factual again. Something he could measure. What happened to the other pilot? Hale did not answer. Neither did I. The question remained between us long enough for Brandon to understand that he had reached the part of the story where curiosity required humanity. His voice softened. Was that Daniel? I looked at him. He had heard the name before. At my father's funeral, perhaps, or from Rachel. I had never told him enough to connect it to anything. Yes. The children were still playing on the far side of the yard, unaware that the adults had stopped pretending this was an ordinary afternoon. I rested my fingers on the wooden case. Daniel Reyes was my co-pilot. My voice sounded distant to me. He was injured after we lifted out. He told me to keep flying. My mother covered her mouth. I did. The admission carried the same weight it had carried in every empty room for 7 years. I kept the aircraft level. I followed the emergency route. I delivered 11 people to the field hospital. My eyes moved to General Hale. And Daniel died beside me. No one corrected my language. No one told me it was not my fault. That phrase had become unbearable long ago, not because it was untrue, but because truth did not always remove guilt. Brandon pulled out a chair and sat. The performance had gone out of him. General Hale spoke carefully. Major Cross made the decision every pilot hopes never to face. Had she turned back or attempted an emergency landing, none of us would likely have survived. I closed my eyes for one breath. Daniel knew that. Hale nodded. Yes. That does not mean I stopped hearing him. My mother took one step toward me. I did not move away, but I did not make it easier for her. Not yet. Brandon rubbed both hands over his face. I was joking. The old defense sounded smaller now. I know, I said. I didn't think. I know that too. He looked up. I would never have touched it if I knew. I lifted the case. That is not the apology you think it is. His brow furrowed. What? You are saying I deserved respect only after you learned what was in the box. His mouth opened. No answer came. I slipped the case back into my bag. You mocked my work before you knew whether it mattered. You opened something after I told you not to. You held my father's last gift to me in the air so people could laugh. I said I'm sorry. No. You said you would have behaved differently if you had known I was important. Brandon looked toward the others, searching for the old protection. No one gave it to him. My aunt stared at the table. Rachel met his eyes but did not rescue him. My mother remained beside me, tears caught along her lower lashes. General Hale spoke again. For the record, her desk job is not a retreat. Brandon looked at him. Hale's voice stayed even. Major Cross rewrote the emergency review process that had failed her crew. 3 aviation units now use those procedures. Pilots are alive because she studies the reports you find boring. That landed harder than the metal. I felt it in the way Brandon's shoulders lowered. Rank could be dismissed as ceremony. A medal could be misunderstood as history. But my current work was the thing he had chosen to ridicule. And now he knew it carried lives too. Hale turned toward me. I did not know you would be here. Neither did I, until this morning. I'm glad I came. I looked past him toward the patio door. The maple leaves shifted in the wind. The case felt heavier inside my bag than it had when I arrived. I'm not, I said. Hale understood. He gave a slight nod. Not offended. Not surprised. The truth had finally entered the backyard. But truth did not automatically make a place safe. I looked at Brandon. I never hid who I was. My voice did not rise. You just never asked without laughing. Then I picked up my bag and walked toward the house. I made it as far as the front hallway before my mother called my name. I stopped beside a framed photograph of our family, taken 12 years earlier. My father was standing behind me in the picture, one hand on my shoulder. Brandon was smiling in the center, already comfortable with taking up more space than anyone else. My mother came through the doorway alone. The voices from the backyard had dropped to a low murmur behind her. Please don't leave like this, she said. I looked at the front door. How should I leave? She flinched. I had not raised my voice. That made it harder for her to dismiss. I should have stopped him, she said. Yes. I kept thinking he would get tired of it. He never had to. She looked down at her hands. I didn't know about the medal. This is not about the medal. I know. But she did not know yet. Not completely. I placed my bag on the narrow table beneath the mirror. For years, every time Brandon made me smaller, someone asked me to be the bigger person. Her eyes filled again. I thought you were strong enough not to care. I was strong enough to survive it. The difference settled between us. Behind the wall, someone moved a chair across the patio. The sound scraped through the house. My mother looked toward the backyard. Your father would be ashamed of us. I shook my head. Do not use him to punish yourself. She looked back at me. He loved you so much. He believed me without needing evidence. That was the inheritance my father had left me. Not the walnut case. Not the medal. The experience of being seen without first having to prove I was worth seeing. My mother reached for my hand, then stopped before touching it. What can I do? It was the first useful question anyone in the family had asked me that day. Stop asking me to absorb what other people refused to correct. She nodded slowly. And Brandon? He does not get access to me because we share grandparents. Her face tightened with pain, but she did not argue. That mattered. I need time, I said. How much? I don't know. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she stepped aside from the door. For once, she did not ask me to stay for the sake of the family. I picked up my bag. General Hale was waiting near my car. He had removed his cap and held it beneath one arm. Without the backyard full of witnesses, he looked less like a 4-star general and more like the man I remembered from the field hospital. Older, tired around the eyes. I'm sorry, he said. You did not open the case. No. But I turned your life into a citation once. I looked at him. He glanced toward the house. People like clean stories, a mission, a medal, a survivor. There was nothing clean about it. I know. For several seconds, we stood beneath the sound of flags snapping along the street. Then he said, "Daniel's mother asks about you." My chest tightened. "I send her a card every Christmas." "She knows." I looked toward my car. "I still cannot visit." "She knows that too." There was no disappointment in his voice. No pressure. Only information. That was kindness I could accept. Hale reached into the inside pocket of his uniform and removed a folded card. "The Recovery Pilots program is opening a second counseling center near Alexandria. They need someone who understands both flight operations and what happens afterward. I already have a job. This would be part-time. I'm not a counselor." "No, you're someone they might believe." I took the card but did not promise anything. That evening, Brandon sent me 3 messages. The first said he had been joking. The second said he was sorry the joke had gone too far. The third said the whole family was upset and asked me not to make things worse. I did not answer. The next morning, he sent a longer message. This one contained no explanation. He wrote that he had touched something after I told him not to. He wrote that he had confused familiarity with permission. He admitted that he liked making me seem unimportant because my silence made him uncertain about his own importance. I read the message twice. Then I placed my phone face down. An honest apology did not create an immediate obligation to reconcile. That was another lesson I had taken too long to learn. Forgiveness could be offered from a distance. 3 months later, I began spending Thursday evenings at the new counseling center. I did not lead therapy sessions. I sat with pilots before they entered them. Sometimes we talked about fuel margins, weather calls, or the strange way a headset could feel heavier after a bad mission. Sometimes we said nothing. Silence felt different there. No one mistook it for weakness. My mother started visiting me alone. She stopped bringing updates about Brandon unless I asked. She learned to sit at my kitchen table without defending anyone. Rachel called one evening and apologized again for staying quiet. This time, she told me she had confronted Brandon herself. Not because I asked. Because she had finally understood that witnessing harm created responsibility. Brandon and I did not speak for almost 8 months. When we finally met, it was at a coffee shop near the river. He looked smaller without an audience. "I keep thinking about what you said," he told me. "Which part?" "That I would have respected you if I knew you were important." I waited. He looked down at his coffee. "I should have respected you before I knew anything." "Yes," he nodded. There was no dramatic reconciliation. No embrace. No promise that everything would return to normal. Normal had been the problem. I told him we could begin with civility. He accepted that. A year after the barbecue, I attended the Memorial Day ceremony in Arlington. I did not wear the medal. I carried Daniel's unopened pack of cinnamon gum in my pocket. Afterward, I drove to the counseling center. A young pilot was waiting on the front steps, staring at the pavement as if the building had asked too much of him. I sat beside him. We watched traffic move through the evening light. After several minutes, he asked, "Does it ever get quiet?" I thought about rotor blades, my father's hand on my shoulder, my mother stepping away from the door, Brandon sitting without an excuse. "Not all at once," I said. He nodded. We stayed there until he was ready to go inside. For years, I had believed peace would arrive when everyone finally understood what I had done. I was wrong. Peace began when I stopped needing them to. For most of my life, I believed strength meant carrying pain without letting anyone see the weight. The military had taught me discipline. My family had taught me silence. Somewhere along the way, I confused the two. Discipline had helped me keep an aircraft in the sky. Silence had allowed people I loved to treat me as though my boundaries were optional. They were not the same. I also believed that if my family ever learned the whole truth, my rank, the mission, the medal, they would finally understand my worth. But worth that depends on evidence is not love. A person should not need a decorated general, a sealed record, or a medal in a wooden case before their word is respected. The salute changed the way my family looked at me. It did not change who I was. I had been worthy when I entered that backyard unnoticed. I had been worthy while reviewing reports in a windowless office. I had been worthy during every quiet year when no one applauded. The lesson was not that Brandon had underestimated someone important. It was that he should never have needed proof that I mattered. Peace begins when you stop auditioning for respect. Sometimes I still wake before dawn with Daniel's voice in my memory. But now, I open the curtains. I let the morning enter. And I remind myself that continuing to live was not the betrayal I once believed it was. It was the promise hidden inside his final words. Keep flying. So I did. If you have spent years staying quiet so everyone else could remain comfortable, I hope this story reminds you that endurance is not the same as peace. You do not need a title, a medal, or another person's approval to justify your boundaries. Share this story with someone who may need to hear that quiet strength is still strength, even when no one recognizes it. And if a part of Evelyn's journey stayed with you, you are welcome to leave your thoughts below. Thank you for spending this time with me.